Welcome to How to Work with a Practice Broker Without Burning Your Nachos. My name is Paul Dr. Nacho Goodman. I am here as a dental practice owner, a dental practice broker, someone who works in the world of the business of dentistry daily. And I've learned so much doing that and want to share that with you. When we have these webinars, whether you're watching on Facebook or on Zoom, if you join us on Zoom, you'll get some prizes. And I know my dentist people, you love free things. So if you join us on Zoom, you'll get some free prizes. If you're here with us on Zoom, the most important person in this webinar is you. The most important thing is you get your questions answered. You can ask them anonymously in the Q&A section. The Nacho team is here. I also like to deliver resources right up front. So if you have any questions about selling a practice, buying a second practice, hiring an associate, or finding a job, you can text help to 215-543-6454, or you can email help to salsa@dentalnachos.com. You can schedule a totally free strategy session with a member of the Dental Nachos team. So I want to welcome awesome members of our transition team, Brandon and Ariel, to our Zoom webinar. They are Nacho transition team members, and they work with me daily in this world of buying and selling practices, helping dentists live their dentistry dream. And the theme for today is how do brokers help? How do dental practice brokers help? And how may dental practice brokers hurt? But before we get into that, I want us to just share a summary of the practices that we have for sale right now. This morning, Brandon and Ariel were sharing them on the group. So if you could just give a blurb as to what you do, Brandon, and maybe one of the practices we have for sale right now.
Sure. I'm the Director of Strategic Growth for Dental Nachos, which means a lot of things in the Dental Nachos world. So I help dentists and as well as the people who support dentistry alike in the Dental Nachos universe. But regards to practice transitions, I help a lot with kind of, getting the ball rolling in regards to someone, whether it be somebody selling a practice or somebody looking to buy a practice, do a merger, or just anything to do with changing their status in the practice world. One of the practices that we have is we have a practice actually in Mercer County, New Jersey.
Where we practice.
Right around the corner from Paul's neck of the woods. This is a smaller practice, just two ops. It's even post-COVID, it's doing a little over $200,000 in collections. It's great for somebody who wants to have a secondary office or do some type of merger with their practice that could be close by. But nice little practice, doing well based on the size, and just a good opportunity possibly for someone.
And I'm going to interrupt, I'm going to interject, not interrupt. It's a good phrase. Tell your wife next time. I'm not interrupting. I'm interjecting. So our goal is to help dentists from feeling like this to like this. I have a practice like that. So it can be a great business opportunity for someone who wants to infuse patients into their core practice or develop a satellite practice. So there's different practices of all sizes. Ariel is going to tell you about one next. Also, Brandon, if ESPN goes down, you can just follow Brandon's Facebook. He will constantly give you free sports updates along with some commentary. So thanks, Brandon. Ariel, we'll go to you. Tell us what you do and one of the practices that we have for sale right now at Dental Nachos.
Sure. I am Ariel Meredith, the Client Service Director and Business Development at Dental Nachos. We have a practice in Montgomery County, PA for sale. It's a GP practice, 5 ops. And in 2020, they did 720,000 plus in collections.
Great, Ariel. So that represents a very standard type practice. 5 operatories, more operatories, the better. $50,000 to $60,000 a month in collections, a PPO-driven office. That there can be good points to PPOs, challenging points. But if you're purchasing a practice that takes insurances, a lot of times patients will stay there because their insurance is accepted there. So that's another why. And I'll share one of their practices in Atlantic County that does $100,000 a month. So $1.2 million a year, 5 operatories there. So those are just 3 examples of practices of different sizes. And if you're interested in finding out more about these practices, you can email us at transitions@dentalnachos.com. You can also text by to 215-543-6454. So thanks, Brandon and Ariel. So they will tell you, I am the same behind the scenes. I am in front of the scenes. We're always ABC, always be creatives. This is one of our creative shows. So I said the theme for this show 5 minutes before it started was how do brokers help? and how do brokers hurt in a transaction? How do brokers help? How do brokers hurt? So let's start with a positive thing first. Brandon, what's one way, and it can be as simple strategies as possible, how would a broker help in a transaction, a buyer find a practice, let's say, a buyer find a practice?
Well, number one, you kind of save time in the search, and that goes on both sides, the buyer and the seller. But number one thing brokers do is help you save time. Time is money. Everybody knows that. Everyone values their time at a different dollar figure. I consider my time valuable. I know Paul and Ariel do as well. I know everyone listening considers their time valuable. So any broker or business consultant that can legitimately help you save time is ultimately going to help you save money.
And that's such a good point, Brandon. Also, you have a real estate background. Just share with the audience why, like people say, I just want to look on the MLS for a house. And I'm like, why is it different with practice sales? Why don't sellers want to just list on a website and let people traipse in and out and make fun of their kitchens and things like that in the real estate world? Tell us about this confidential nature to it.
Right. Well, in any business transaction, business brokers, as opposed to, dealing with personal assets like real estate, you want that confidentiality for a couple of reasons. One, there's competition. You depending on how long it takes for your practice to get sold, you might have, and then, everyone's not nice and everyone doesn't play nice in business. So you might have some local-ish dentist competitors might want to poach your patients, or might want to, I've seen all kinds of crazy things where you just don't want people to know exactly what you're doing from a business standpoint. It also does affect you in negotiations sometimes. You also don't want to divulge too much personal financial information when you don't have to. And, you can have just speculators out there who aren't really interested in buying your practice, just kind of getting too much personal financial and business information about
really good points. And also the thing I'll add before we go to Ariel's how to help is that I want to tell you this story about this 8-year-old whose parents came to him and said they were moving 5 miles away from where they lived. And that 8-year-old broke down hysterically crying. That was me. I was convinced my parents were ruining my life. I would never make new friends. And I moved 5 miles away. So that story about your practice team is like a family. And a lot of times, if they know you're selling a practice, they're going to ask every day, is today the day? Is not today not the day? And it could be a year-long process. So one of the reasons why it can be very disruptive if too many people know for the seller. So keeping it confidential is key. Ariel, you've been doing this with me for 3 years. What is another way you see dental practice brokers help, whether it's a buyer, a seller? Where do they infuse help into the process?
Great question. I think that they infuse help in weeding out specific buyers. I know with us, certain times when we promote the offices, we'll get emails and calls in. We'll give them just a brief summary of the office once they sign the NDA, and they either want to move forward or they don't move forward. So we don't have to waste the selling doctor's time with someone who's not that serious about their specific practice.
So such good points right off the bat from Brandon saying, save you time, let you know about practice deals you wouldn't know about. Ariel's really good in that. They weed out process and answer questions so you don't have to. So if Ariel and Brandon were trying to find me a new friend, and the friend said, I really love camping, should I be friends with Paul? They would say, no, he is not the friend for you. So what you may not realize is one of the value as a seller working with brokers is they are helping you weed out people that you don't have to talk to. These conversations can be hours in length. There'd be a lot of questions. So if you're the type of person who doesn't want to talk to 30, 40, 50 people and wants it drilled down dental term into people who would be good candidates, that's a good value there. Now, my goal, ask questions in the chat, ask questions in the Q&A. If someone's on Facebook, the team can share you. So now we talked about the help to the process. Brokers bring buyers, brokers save you time, brokers weed out. But now I purchased a practice and I overpaid by at least $30,000. And I thought the broker in that deal was not helpful. It was my job to take care of myself. There was no Facebook groups, but it was a dual representation broker who claimed that broker could work for both the buyer and the seller. So Brandon, where's some places where a broker might hurt or harm the transaction?
Well, definitely if they fail to disclose the capacity in which they're working. And it's very dangerous when it comes to business brokerage and dental practice brokerage, as opposed to something like real estate, because you don't have as many regulations on the broker themselves to prevent them from doing things. Not that you might not have a bad real estate broker, but at least they have something to lose. They could lose their license, they could be fined. There's other things that can happen. You don't really have a lot of that in dental brokerage. So you got to really pay attention to what your broker is doing, who they're representing and how, who's paying them basically, and where their loyalties lie.
And it's such a good point. I saw this floating around about one of my favorite movies, Fight Club. The first rule of Broker Fight Club is there are no rules. So unless there's some few stages of real estate thing, this is very different than dentistry, guys, where you can lose your license. You have to take CE. It's a field with a low barrier to entry. So you just want to really make sure you build a good team of advisors that include dental focused attorney, dental focused accountant. If you want to connect with any advisors that work with us, that work in this field daily, just email Dental Nacho advisor team to salsa@dentalnachos.com, and we'll be glad to connect with it. Now, Ariel, I don't know if you saw this, but I was happy to see that taxes were pushed back a month to May 17th, even though I do nothing for my own taxes. But what I know is I don't have to start to get my Vanguard thing together and for my accountant. So you have to collect a lot of data, and it's a process. So tell us, what are some of the data points that you collect from possible sellers to create a profile? What are some things that they should expect to have ready?
That is a great question. Some of the main things would be their tax returns from the past 3 years.
Right.
Also, another big thing is for the year that they're selling, their P&L, their collections and productions.
Procedure
and
mix.
Production by services
Procedure
and
code.
provider.
So there's so many things, Dennis. And I'm like, if I just sell my practice tomorrow, if I said, Brandon, Ariel, help me, I'd be very annoyed because I'd have to spend hours with my office manager and with my accountant getting a lot of data, but you cannot, you can't go on a big trip unless you pack. Every time I go on a big trip, I'm like, why'd I schedule this? I hate packing. But then I remember when I get on the trip, I get to have margaritas and sit on the beach. So if you want to think about getting to the end line, you want to start to develop your data points now. If you like the list, totally complimentary checklist of what we collect, so you're just aware of what you need to get together, we'll be glad to send that to you. Just email valuation list to salsa@dentalnachos.com, because that's part of the process. Collecting that data, Brandon, I mean, I would say you're at least a 3-month process, right? To collect that data, would you say?
If you haven't started and aren't really aware of all the different types of data and reports that could be asked of you, yeah, it could take a few months. You know, a lot of times, you know, and it also depends on who you're selling to. You know, and I'm sure you talk about this a little bit, Paul, in a minute, but selling to a private owner is different than selling to a group or DSO. Oftentimes, those corporations are going to want more specific data than often a private buyer will, just because they have different criteria that they use when they evaluate what's a good investment for their, you know, and what their investment strategy is. So a lot of times, like if you have all the bases, if you always are, you know, have your tax returns up to date, your production by procedure report up to date, you know, whatever, you know, software, Dentrix, whoever, you know, whatever reports that you can get, that's all very valuable. You know, I always tell people you should operate your business like you're going to sell it tomorrow anyway. And the more you're proactive about that, the better off you'll be when this time comes.
And so I'll bring up a point it's a poignant point, but it's happened in my own personal life. It's happened to dentists. Life happens. Injury, illness, death, moving away happens. And if you leave your family with this task without the data, it can be devastating to them. So what you would want to do is, we have someone in this chat who's great, who said, when is it too early to start? It's never too early to start to prepare your practice. It's most often our biggest asset, but definitely most our complex asset. So I want to share it's complex because if you want to sell a house, anyone can live in it. But if I want to sell my practice in New Jersey, I need a dentist, not that many dentists. I need a dentist that's licensed in New Jersey, a dentist that wants to work in Mercer County. So it's never too early to start preparing. Ari, I want to ask you a team-related question. Someone's going to sell their practice or buy practice, because it's pretty much the same team members. There's one big difference. Who are some of the people that we connect you to put on your team who are not us as the broker? You can even say their names, which are fine, just if it helps you. Who's someone that you would connect?
Absolutely. We love connecting people to the different banks that we work with, Huntington Bank, Bank of America, Lendeavor, to get them connected to make sure that the buyer has the financial means to actually purchase the practice. Another important one is a dental focused attorney. Also, you want to do dental focused accountants. And if you're looking to buy, a financial planner is also highly recommended for that.
Really great points. The banks that are definitely sponsors of our group. One of the reasons Brandon's such a great role model for this, and I'll let him speak about this. So if we connect you with a bank who's a sponsor, they don't just give you a better deal because you're with the Nacho Group, but they may give you better service because of the relationship with us. Brandon, why do these people give better service to people who have relationships with us? I mean, what points of sales, life, being friends, going to Del Frisco and so on, why are these relationships so important?
Well, all these people, bankers, CPAs, attorneys, I mean, their whole business is based off relationships. So, and when your business is based off relationships and referrals, you can leverage that, right, with having other people you have relationships with find you other referrals and relationships. So, being affiliated with a group like Dental Nachos and, saying, hey, I know Paul, I know Brandon, I know Ariel, that carries some weight just because of the scope of our relationship. So, it's always good to, ABN, always be networking. That's one of my acronyms. I don't have as many as Paul does, but I have a few. But always be networking because you never know where one relationship can lead you.
That's so important. I want to use a quick dental term for you guys to understand. This is really golden nacho. Hopefully we can pull this from the video because Brandon is a civilian. Ariel does work in the dental industry as a hygienist, and I'm a dentist. So I'm going to give you three patients. One's Ariel, one's Brandon, one's Amanda. Each of them break their tooth on the lower right. Every time Amanda comes in, she brings me free bread and she's calm and she doesn't ask a million questions about her insurance. Can Amanda come in today? Bring her in, no problem. Ariel comes in kind of like for every 6-month recall. She, sometimes follows our instructions, usually comes on time. Okay, maybe I'll bring Ariel in maybe tomorrow. Brandon only calls us when he has a problem. He doesn't come in for his cleanings. He often just comes for emergencies. I don't mistreat anyone, but where you put people in line is most often based on this one factor, how much you like them. So be the likable person to people. I treat everyone fairly, but I'm not going to necessarily stay late for someone who doesn't come for their cleanings because they're not partnering with me well. So don't be that person who calls up a bank and says, I need this deal done in 3 weeks and you've never met them. Connect early and often in the process with all of these people because we're busy as dentists. So attorneys and accountants are busy too. And none of us like that feeling where we feel someone is pressuring us to do something quicker than we want us to do. So really good points. We have a great question in the chat and I'll let each of us kind of talk about, because Ariel's a team member, so she could speak this. How and when in the process of selling would you inform your office? That's got to be a touchy process. So Ariel, if you were a hygienist in the office and you knew it was being sold, when do you think would be a good time to know?
As a team member, I would probably want to know when the office was listed. And just to kind of get my ducks in a row, because sometimes team members don't always have the opportunity to stay on once there's a new owner. So I would just want to know sooner rather than later, just in case the new owner comes on, they lay the existing team off. I would want to make sure I was financially okay for a little bit.
So it's a really good, authentic point from Ariel, because what happens is people worry with change that they're not going to have a position. I will share with you that I think oftentimes teams are told too late, but I will kindly add to Ariel's thing that the main problem with telling a team when it's listed is that they sometimes do the "are we there yet" thing on a trip, and the process is a lot longer than they think. So sometimes sometimes there's excitement for the owner. Oh, I'm so glad you're going to get to move to Arizona. I hope we find a new owner, and I know you're going to recommend to keep us. I just want to share, most of the time, teams will stay on. Do you want to know why most of the time teams stay on? Very hard to find new team members, very hard to find new dental assistants. So Ariel's point is really a good one, but the listing sometimes can create a lot of office emotion of, are we there yet? Brandon, where would you think in telling the team might be good, or think about telling the team?
I think, well, I have once again, I'm a little more proactive in just some of the businesses I've been involved in. I like it when I'm aware of the plans, to transition. I think, if you have a good relationship with your team, and, every culture and every office and every business is different, but if you have a good relationship with your team, you can say, hey, I'm looking to do something within the next 2 years. And I'm going to, make sure that, you guys are taken care of, that, we only sell to somebody that fits the culture that we already have in this office, but it's just the right thing to do. And they'll respect you and feel good about knowing. Some people may say, hey, I only want to work for you. I'm going to start dusting off my resume now, 2 years out. But I think it's just going to make the vibe in the office way more positive if people know early. I'm all about disclosure. So
we talk about always explain your why at all times. So a few things I can add, which are both good value pieces. And I asked Ariel as a team member, and I'm a dentist. So what I share with buyers is until you get an LOI, it's oftentimes too early because it causes commotion. Just sharing. However, Brandon's point's a good one where let's say you're 4 or 5 years away from moving to Florida. And this is what I always share. When you go to people's house and you're the company, you always have this weird feeling that this is how clean they keep their house. But we all know everyone cleans for company, and that is not how your house is most of the time. So what if you made your practice company clean? And what if you work together to improve how the office, the overhead, to improve the production? So it could be a really good opportunity as a leader to say, might look to transition. There's also something really important that I want to share at this moment, and I'll bring up Brandon out of this. So there's two big parts to a dentist life cycle: selling their practice and hanging up the handpiece. Selling their practice and hanging up the handpiece, often two different dates. Ariel, if someone's selling to a DSO, how many years do they often want them to keep working there?
Anywhere from 6 months to, I would say, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and oftentimes they really want 2 years plus. So what happens is the owner's still there with you as the grandfather of the practice. Even if you're selling to a traditional private practice, there may be a transition point. So there's really a good opportunity to have an authentic discussion, totally based on your team. But so if you tell someone your practice is being sold and they immediately leave, that's probably a good thing because they're not a good fit for you anyway. You're going to want to create confidence in the buyer that your core team members will likely stay. So it's really one of the best questions. And I find people telling from the LOI to the asset purchase agreement till the day the practice is sold. And it's always going to be disruptive to that. But when you have a good open discussion, that's where a consultant, Brandon, we work with consultants. Would you think a consultant, Brandon, could help in that process with the language and the verbiage for the owner?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's communicating, we talk a lot about patient. I know you talk a lot about patient communication, but communication with your team is just as important, if not some cases even more important than patient communication, because you need everybody aligned. I mean, culture, once again, I'll say that word, there's nothing more important than the culture of an office, to not just its productivity, but, just everybody's morale. And I think if you can bring people in that know how to help you with that, by all means, do that. And not just when you're thinking about selling. I mean, I think this is something that can be done at any stage during your business life.
Always be communicating with your team and creating an environment where you guys can handle so many different things. These are things that go beyond dentists go on maternity leave, dentists get injured. It's a really good question. People ask more questions in the chat. We have 2 free prizes if you're here on Zoom. What I'd like to wrap up with before questions, which I think is really good, is who can buy a dental practice? Okay, so what categories of buyers are there? And let's just take Dr. Nachos House of Dentistry, awesome name for a dental practice. And it does $1 million a year and it has 5 operatories, $1 million a year with 5 operatories. And I am a solo GP. And I say, you know what? I've heard about DSOs. I've heard about MSOs. I've heard about I've heard about private practice buyers. Can a new dentist buy my practice? So I'm just going to simply ask Ariel and Brandon, because they work with these people daily. What's one example of a buyer, Ariel, who could purchase my practice, Dr. Nachos House of Dentistry?
A DSO.
A DSO. And what have you learned
about?
Or
a group practice.
DSO or group practice. So in working with DSOs, they're going to often ask me to stay on for 3 years as an associate before they transfer. Now, you've worked this. What are some advantages you might see if you were in my shoes of selling to a DSO? What good points do you see?
Good points. They go very close to the asking price.
Higher asking price.
Higher asking price. Banks are more likely to lend to them, or they have funds already for them to be able to purchase. So it's not as much of a struggle. And there is the opportunity, if you still want to work a few years, for you to stay on and just not be the person in charge of the practice. So not have to deal with some of the headaches of ownership.
So really good point. So they might give me $1 million like Dr. Evil, sharks with lasers on their head. Plus, if I work for 3 years and make $250,000 a year, I've got $1.75 million. So the total money I can get from a DSO might be higher. But one of the challenges, Brandon, you've met dentists, you're new to our people, they're not always adaptable to change. So what might be a challenge working in your practice without someone owning it for DSO? Ariel did a good point. Give me a challenge, maybe a mindset challenge, or just what you might see as some of the reluctance you've seen from.
The number one reluctance you'll get is how the new ownership changes things for their staff. That's probably the number one thing. How changes operational procedures, changes software, just policies and procedures. I know we hate that word policy, but just changes protocols in the office that the staff is not happy with.
And this is about asking yourself a question. I mean, we've all had this. People have people's in-laws come live with them for some reason. Somebody, are you the type of person that after 40 years can work for somebody? It's as simple as that. Is that your, sometimes people say, yes, sure, I'm adaptable and it's great. So that's a DSO. And now let's talk about a private dentist, someone who's 5 years out. Brandon, walk us through. Someone goes to a bank, they loan them probably 85%. So the asking price, like Ariel said, is likely a little lower. But what is an advantage, Brandon, of a private practice buyer? Do I get to leave sooner? Do I get to preserve private practice dentistry? Tell us some of the advantages you see for a private practice.
Well, it's the one-on-one relationship that you can build with that buyer as the seller. I mean, it's really a transfer. It doesn't have that corporate feel. And a lot of times that private owner is just going to want to come in and just continue what's been going on there. They're not there to reinvent the wheel. So it's usually an easier sell to your staff and your patients. It's just, hey, I'm moving on. Here's a good friend of mine who's going to be coming in and just taking over exactly where we left off.
And you made a good point. So the sooner you want to leave and hang up the handpiece, the less likely a DSO is a good fit. So it's pretty opposite. So if you were thinking, I want to be done in 6 months to a year, DSOs often will not even consider you. So now you're in private buyer. So our goal is to show the good points and the challenging points of both private practice buyers, DSO buyers, group practices. Ariel, is there any challenges that you could think in the process? If I'm thinking, okay, I want to sell to Gary Guac. He's been a dentist for 5 years with the same philosophy of occlusion. He's got the bank loan. He's going to take over. Any challenge that you see? You might not see any, but any challenges or things to watch out for?
As the seller or the buyer?
As the seller.
That is a good question. If they already have the money from the bank, I can't think of one right now.
And I can add in as the person selling the practice, the challenge might be that sometimes those deals fall apart at the end for whatever reason. And DSO deals, they can fall apart too. But if you're looking for momentum, sometimes they can go longer. And if I have a job somewhere else and I'm buying a practice, I might say at the end, hey, this isn't for me. So that goes back to the circle in the beginning. That's why Brandon, I know Bob Septak has said this. You probably have said this. I'm sure like every dentist has to memorize the Krebs cycle. I feel like every agent has to remember one buyer is no buyer, right? So tell us a little bit about the one buyer being no buyer, especially if you're dealing with the private practice buyer as a seller, because sometimes they get invested in Sally Salsa. And as a broker, our job is to say, we also want you to talk to other people. What's the value of that?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you kind of summed it up. I mean, buyers, especially if it's their first practice, get cold feet all the time. Yeah. And, a lot of times the push that they need is knowing that someone else could get this practice before they do. So, your broker, even if you think you've got the perfect buyer, the first person your broker introduced you to was perfect. They got the loan. They seemed great. They toured your office and met your staff and your staff likes them. You're not done, because deals do fall through in the end all the time for a variety of reasons. And it might not be cold feet. It could be a life-changing emergency that could happen, that could make a deal fall through. So you definitely don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, no matter how good the buyer prospect is.
For sure. So it's just such a key point. We're asking dentists, and I'm a dentist too, is to be mentally flexible when we're not used to being mentally flexible. We're used to saying this tooth's getting a crown, it's getting a crown, it's getting a crown. We don't like it when it changes to an implant. But in the business world here, starting early is key. Connecting with key people. There's so many connectors out there. For all you know, as a buyer out there, your bank may connect you to a practice because they're connectors too. We've had situations where people are disappointed that they didn't get this practice, their offer wasn't accepted, and their accountant introduces them to someone. So really great. If there's any future further questions, anyone from Facebook, I'll be glad to answer them. But I'll wrap up with my team here. Ariel, if you were buying a practice tomorrow, and you are going to go out there and have to buy a dental practice, is there any small, medium, or large piece of advice you would give to someone buying a dental practice or selling a practice just in the process? You could repeat what we've said or just a new thought from you.
Yeah, I think for both buyers and sellers, I feel like it's never too early to start, as we like to say, JFOing, just finding out, learning about the process of what you need to buy, and also learning about the process of what you need to sell. I think taking practice management courses for people who are wanting to buy in the next few years is really important, because you don't get much business training in school. So you want to make sure you're prepared on the business end, but also managing the team is a big thing too. Something that you said in the past, Paul, that kind of really stuck with me is no one's trained to manage people in all different aspects of life. So you could have like an 18-year-old fresh out of high school working as a dental assistant, and then a hygienist who's like a mom of 3, and managing the lifestyle differences of them and also the personality differences.
So important that where's in their life situation. Someone asked, can they get a recording of this? For sure. Team will share. You can text broker to 215-543-6454. Also, what Ariel said is the key to success in life is managing expectations. You can talk to a member of our team totally for free just to hear about the process. I was at the service station this morning for my car talking with Brandon and somebody who might want to sell to a corporate group, just sharing insight on the process. Get more insight on the process. Brandon, same thing for you. Any piece of Nacho Man Hill strategy advice for this process for people out there that they could take home from this webinar?
We touched on it earlier, but just remember that, you know, this is one of the biggest transactions of your life, if not the biggest transaction of your life. And it should be incorporated into your overall financial plan, your overall retirement plan. So whether you are the buyer or whether you are the seller, this is something that your team, your financial advisor, your dental focused CPA and dental focused, I would suggest financial advisor, has to have informed you on the logistics of. When it's not just about how much will this bank loan me. Remember, these bankers, which I used to be one, make money based on the amount of fees they get, which is based on the size of these loans. So just because your numbers mean that you can afford a $1.5 million practice doesn't mean that that's your personal goal and your financial plan. You know, you may have other things that you want to do. You may have a spouse that has a business that you guys want to invest in, or property that you want to, but there's just so many variables. So there's no set rule. And that's why you have to have your own team of dental focused advisors involved in the process, whether you're buying or selling.
And I'll wrap it up, and we have one more question. Really great insight. You know, I always say in Philadelphia is doing better, not New York, but dental offices are people places, not pizza places. We do have good pizza here, way better than people think, but it's a people place. So the most money doesn't mean the best deal for you in selling practice. The best rate on a bank deal doesn't mean the best deal for you. It's the people part, it's the money part. Someone asked, what type of flexibility do they have with staying on with the DSO? Because they don't want to stay on for 2 to 3 years. They'd rather stay on for 6 months. I will share with you, 9 out of 10 times a DSO deal will not be right for you. If they have the ability to backfill your position, they may consider that. But one of the reasons they're paying that higher price is to get you to stay on, like that quarterback who's going to keep leading the team. So if you think I'm a person who wants to sell and be done in 6 months, I encourage you, watch this. Work, maximize your practice profitability, list it with a broker, get a private practice buyer, sell it, stay on for 6 months, and ride off into the sunset. Throw your handpiece off of your donkey and just keep on going to wherever you want to go. So thanks so much, guys. Here, I'm going to take us off Facebook Live for a minute here, and I'm here just in the Zoom. So I see some really cool people in the chat. Brandon, Ariel, awesome job. Nacho team, did I miss any questions from the Zoom?
I don't think you did. I was
right,
watching,
cool.
Great.
Great.
It would be great if
here.
I could get Brandon and Paul to smile.
Oh yeah, we'll smile.
Move your hands, Brandon.
Sorry, I was checking in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, guys. Take your souvenir prizes, because the course on transitions is great. And reach out to us if you want to have a conversation with any of us here. We love doing that, helping you move on to the next step, whether you're buying, selling, or somewhere in between. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Brandon.
Hey, everybody.